Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Meet the Author. Today, I have Hollis Wynn here with me. Hollis, thank you so much for joining us today for Meet the Author.
Thank you for having me.
So excited that you could make it on here today. And so, I always like to ask and kind of start off with an icebreaker question. So, my
Okay.
first question for you today is: would you consider yourself more of a morning person or a night owl?
I typically refer to myself as a permanently exhausted pigeon because it depends. Some days, the mornings are great, and some days the evenings are great. But as a general rule, I'm like I don't know, 8 to 8 person, maybe. Definitely not mornings unless it's on my own terms.
That makes sense. I feel like a lot of people thrive kind of that middle of the day area.
Mhm.
I'm like ready to go to sleep. My boyfriend always likes to make fun of me. He calls me a grandma because it's like 9 o'clock and I'm like getting cozy on the couch and like, okay, good night. I am
Yeah.
not a night owl. It has to be special circumstances to keep me out past 10 o'clock at night. So
Yeah.
definitely more of a morning person over here.
Yeah. I plan my nights if I'm going to be out late. Otherwise, it's early.
That's awesome. Well, for people who maybe aren't super familiar with who is Hollis Wynn, kind of give yourself just a little bit of an introduction of everything of who you are and kind of as you obviously are an author, but some of the books that you write.
Sure. I grew up in Texas and have moved all over the country. I've moved 26 times. So that's a little fun fact. Um, I've been reading since I was in second grade, and I used to go to sleep with a book on my face. And my radio going and my little strawberry shortcake lamp, and my dad would come in and turn everything off, and he would take my book and put it on the side of my bed so that was always on the right page. And as I got older, I read everything I could get my hands on until I was in college. And then in college, I had to do a lot of reading for for school, so I kind of stepped back. And once I got my first real job, I didn't have a whole lot of money, like most people when they're first starting out. So I read and read and read and read. Anything. My mom and I would like collect books. She would go to the used bookstore and we would swap. So I would read a box and give her mine, and then she would read a box and give me hers. And it was so fun because we read different things. So it allowed me to really experience different things than I normally would have gravitated to. And then in 2012, when I lived in New York, somebody gave me a Kindle for Christmas. And it literally was life changing because I didn't read romance before then. I didn't know what free books were. So I was like, I'll try this. Oh, it's 99 cents. I can afford that. There you go. And it really started my love of romance because it was just taking a chance and doing something different. After that, I was a blogger, had my own blog for, geez, it's still running. My best friend just runs it now. So 10 years, 10 years ish. And I had a friend who was a writer, and she was like, "You always say you can do it, do it." So I did. I sat down, and the first time I was writing, I wrote 10,000 words in one day. And I was like, "Oh, I can do this for sure." I did, and I wrote Bent. It was my first book, and I never really had any aspirations or clue of what would come from that. And so, yeah, now I'm still writing, have 4, 7 books out, and many more are coming this year. So, yeah.
That's exciting, and that's crazy that you've lived. You said you've moved 26 different times. That's
Mhm. Yeah.
that's a big number. I have moved not that many times, and the moving process is always the worst. So I give you all of the praise for doing that because that takes a very strong person to be able to upend and move that many different times in your life.
It does, and, I've learned a couple tricks. 1, you hire the moving company, and 2, you pay them to pack it and unpack it. It's expensive, but it is so worth it. It makes life
Honestly,
so much easier.
I can totally see that. I can see why that would be
Yeah.
worth it and something to do. So we talked about how you said you have 7 books out now. So your
Mhm.
most recent book is Chance. If you want to show people what that cover looks like, and we could talk a little bit about what it was like for you writing this book and what that book is about, so people who maybe haven't picked it up yet kind of know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah, so Chance was written in last year in 2022 as part of an anthology, and the anthology was unexpected. So it was Unexpected Ever After. And so the story had to be a little bit unexpected. And I had the most fun writing it. I laughed so hard. The character's a workaholic. She really has, she has no life outside of work. And her best friend owns an adult toy store. And yes, so it's like the super fun and the super like conservative. So Henley is her best friend, and she calls Collins and says, "Hey, what's going on?" And they make jokes about how long it's been since she had a relationship or sexy time. And so she ends up sending her a vibrator through the mail. And it really was like I had so much fun. I laughed writing it. The characters are fun. It is a short story. It's really only about 35,000 words. Um, but I fully expect that there will be something in the future, with those characters again. Alexander Lake, you meet in Crash just a little bit. And so he becomes the hero in this book. And really, he's supposed to teach Collins basically how to chill out and have a relationship and date and find her confidence. And what transpires is just basically a comedy. So it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And like you mentioned, you kind of meet one of the characters in a book before. So I have some of the books here. So it's the Love's Complicated kind of series. So it starts with Bent, which you said is the first book that you
Mhm.
published. And then I believe we go to Breathe after that. And
Mhm.
then Crash, which you said is where we
Yeah.
get to be introduced. And then now Chance is the next book. So
Mhm.
how was it like for you getting to kind of go back into that series a little bit more and writing more of those characters?
I feel like this series is always gonna be the one that's, like, open-ended because it started just as friends, right? So it's a group of friends in Chicago, and, when you have a group of friends, everybody also has friends outside of that group. So it really has just become fun. The first 2, Bent and Breathe, I would probably classify them as sweet romances. There's not any, um hanky-panky on the page. It's kind of mostly off the page. And then with my other books, they're a little more steamy. But Crash is a romantic comedy also, like Chance. And so it ended up being sweet and the romantic comedies. And I think I'll probably stick with that for the rest of the series. But yeah, whenever I feel like I have something that is stirring and I can tie it in, I will definitely come back there.
So, what is their writing process like for you? Kind of when you just start to come up with these characters, how do you put them into play and then obviously turn it into a book?
So I'm a journaler and I have tons of journals everywhere. When I get an idea for a story, I write it down. And then I kind of just leave it be. And if it comes back to me and comes back and comes back and comes back, these characters just kind of pop into my head at random times, then I know that's the one that needs to be written next. And so often I use things that I've either experienced or seen. With my day job, I travel a lot, so airports are great places to people watch. And so you see some of the most random things happen. But I use those as inspiration for my story. They're never exactly what I witnessed or, based on someone I know. They're just somebody either says something or tells me something or does something, and it starts, the whole creative process in my mind.
So, you said once you kind of start coming back to these characters again and
Mhm.
again and again, that's when you start to kind of formulate and plan the book idea. So,
Yeah.
once you start to sit down to write these books, would you
Mhm.
consider yourself more? I've kind of learned this term from interviewing authors, a plotter or a pantser when it comes to the process and how you go about actually writing those books once you have the ideas in your head.
So it really depends. With Bent, I was a total pantser. I had literally no idea what was gonna happen next. As I was writing, I was like, what now? Okay, we'll do that." But as I go, I'm becoming more of a they call them a plotster or a plantster, where I do a little bit of plotting and a little bit of pantsing, so that I have a good framework for where it's going, but it's not really, um, drilled down so deeply that I can't deviate. So yeah.
That's awesome. So when you're writing your books, I know you said you have your journals and everything, and you take inspiration kind of from the things that are around you. So you said like people
Mhm.
watching at the airport and things like that. Do you prefer when you're actually starting to write the book to maybe be at home, or could you write somewhere like at an airport or a coffee shop or something that you can also people watch while you're doing that?
So, fun fact, my first 3 books were written in coffee shops. I would get up on Saturday and write from 8 to 12 at the local Starbucks, wherever I was at, whether I was traveling or just at home. And then I moved here. I live in Arkansas now, right as COVID hit. So I had no idea like what was happening. And I had to write books here at home. And that was really difficult at first. Um, because when you are at home all the time, you lose your inspiration because you don't have those people that you're seeing and interacting with. So, it was a little hard, but I got back into it, and now I have a local coffee shop called Java Dudes that I tend to go to on either Saturday or Sunday morning and just pull up a table in the back and kinda bang out some words.
That's awesome. And that's fun that you're the first person so far that I've interviewed that actually prefers to write not at home. Most people that I've
Really
talked to that they prefer to be at home where they have like a little spot set out like specifically for them in their house. So that's fun
nice.
and exciting that you were the first person that was like, no, I want to be somewhere else. I want to be at my
Yeah.
coffee shop or doing something else. And that's cute that you have like a little local hangout now. Maybe you should include that in one of your books.
Oh, I probably will. I love this place. It's so fun and relaxing, a little industrial, but a little modern. They have art from local artists on the wall, and you can buy them. So it's just really, so much fun.
That's awesome. So I have kind of a fun-ish game that I like to play
Okay.
with people when they come on the show. So I want to start off with, and I have 4 of your books here, but I think you probably have a few more too that you can grab and
Mhm.
we can continue if you want. But I want to try to get you to summarize what happens in your book, or just summarize your book in one word if you can. And it can't be the title, because I know some of these have one-word titles.
They do. Okay.
So
Um,
we're gonna go kind of out of order. I'm just gonna
okay.
jump around. We're gonna start with breathe. How would you summarize this in one word?
Angsty.
Okay. Then we'll go to bent next.
Um, Emotional.
Okay. Next.
I would say my favorite. But that is cop drama.
Okay. And then the last one I have is crash.
Cupcakes.
Perfect. Okay, well, you kind of answered. If you want to, maybe we can keep going. If you want to use some of the ones that you have, I know you have chance by you. If you want to
I do.
possibly summarize.
Let's see. There you go. So I have Chance, and then I have Shameless Stranger, which is a Cocky Hero Club novel. And then I have Firefly, which is the short prequel to The Rumors Are True, which is going to come out this fall for a new series.
Ooh,
Yeah.
exciting. Could you describe some of those in maybe one word if you had to?
Um, sure. Let's see. Chance. I would call it fun. Totally. It's just a fun book. Firefly is sexy,
Okay.
and Shameless Stranger is millionaire. Not quite a billionaire, but a millionaire.
Awesome. I love that. So you touched on this a little bit just a second ago when I held up our cop here. You said this is
Yes.
your favorite. So I normally like to ask authors if you have a favorite book, and you've very much
Mhm.
already explained it. So walk me through why this is your favorite book and why people should pick up this one immediately if it's your favorite.
So this is my favorite because in 2013, yeah, 2013, I was driving cross country from Chicago to Virginia, and I had this ridiculous idea. And I wasn't really writing at that point, but I went back as soon as I got to Virginia. I went to my hotel room and I was just like putting all these thoughts on a page. And the whole premise of the book is that a lady finds a baby in a trash can and she rescues the baby. And what happens from there is suspenseful and mysterious. And, like all of these questions that she didn't even know she needed to ask, she started to ask. And, when you're running from the cops with a baby, the last thing you want to run into is a cop. So he's a DEA agent and he is next door where she takes refuge. And it is so much fun. So much fun. So,
That's awesome. Definitely
yeah.
sounds like something worth people picking up. And another question, maybe along that lines, which it could also be characters from this book, but do you have a favorite character that you've ever written in any of your books?
I would say that Kerrigan and Bent definitely holds a super special place in my heart because she's the first one. So when it's the first one, it's hard to say whether they're like your favorite or not, right? But they're definitely there. As far as primary characters, I would say it's probably Fallon from Firefly. I just love everything about her. But secondary characters, it's going to be Henley from Chance because Henley is a hot mess and just so much fun. Like she has no filter, and I just love that about her.
We
So,
love, we love characters that have no filter. Those are the
yes,
stars.
exactly.
That's awesome. So for going, we'll go back to Ben since that was again your very first novel that you wrote. What kind of inspired you to? I know you kind of talked about how you'd been a reader and everything, and you had people that were just like, you said that you could do it, go and do it. But what kind of inspired you for this story to kind of get it up and going and decide, this is the story that I'm going to write?
So when I lived in upstate New York, I would take the train down to New York City a lot. And there's just so much you can see and do. But when you roll into Penn Station, it's just sheer chaos. And there are trains coming in and trains leaving, and the Long Island Railroad. And I would come in on Amtrak, and then there's like just so much happening. But I remember just seeing people staring at the train schedule to make sure they were on time. And it occurred to me that you could literally roll into Penn Station and just pick a place and go because there's a train going there. And so when I wrote Bent, I had her. There's a tragedy in the beginning, the loss of a parent, and she's like, I don't want to live here anymore where I live, so I'm just gonna go. So she goes to the train station close to where she lives and picks the next train that's leaving, and it takes her to Chicago. And I chose Chicago because that's where I moved to at that point. And I was lonely and I didn't know anything. And so I would just randomly take the subway places and walk through the city. And so I did a lot of my learning the city through her because I wanted to write with experience. And so that's what I did. And there is one scene in the book that is true. It did happen. My friends like to laugh and go, okay, I read it. So what thing is true? Was it this? Was it this? And I will say what happened was mortifying. And so how could I not put it in a book? Right.
I maybe could guess what scene it is. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I'm
Right.
trying to think of some of the possibly like embarrassing. Is it possibly the one that's on a train
Yes,
or a
that's the one
subway?
that's on a train. Yeah. So that really happened.
Wow, I cannot imagine what that was like. But at
Yeah.
least in the story, there was someone to rescue
Yes,
her.
there was no one to rescue me. So we just, like, you chalk it up to life experience.
It's funny that you were able to include that. Do you have any other things that maybe you like to like splash about real life into any of your other books? Or do you kind of try to keep it basically just fictional and everything that
You
you just
know,
write?
I will say life is stranger than fiction often. So all of my books are very 99% fiction, except for Crash. And I won't lie. When I lived in Chicago, I did some online dating. And so some of the antics that happened ended up in this book because it really, like, people just wouldn't believe it if I told them. So I was like, why not? I'll just include it and have some fun.
That's awesome. And I love that
Mhm.
you're able to include that in a fun way. And probably at the
Yeah,
time, it was not the most fun when you were trying to go through all of that and deal with the crazies and the antics. But
it was a little awkward.
to look back and be like, you know what? I'm gonna stick it in a book. Maybe someone's
Yeah,
gonna read your book one day and they're gonna be like, "Is this about me?"
right. Yeah, maybe.
That's hilarious. Okay, I want to kind of switch gears for a second and talk about your newer books that are coming out. You said you have more planned for the fall. So let's talk more about that for a second to get people maybe excited if they are a big time Hollis Wynn fan and they've been reading all of your works and they are looking forward to those next book that you have coming out.
Awesome. So, Firefly, like I said, is the short prequel, and it is about a woman who, when she was in college, met two guys, and she fell in love with both of them. Her parents didn't approve, so she would get together one weekend a year with them, and it was just them, nothing else happening, no outside forces. And so this is one summer when they get together and what happens in that weekend. And so when I wrote this, I wasn't sure if I was going to write a full length. And then my readers were like, what happens? What happens next? So in the fall, there will be the follow up to that, which is The Rumors Are True. And yeah, so it'll be Miller Creek is finally coming to fruition.
That's exciting. And what do you have a day yet that it's going to be
I
published?
don't quite yet because I am not so good at keeping secrets, but in September I'll be releasing my first book under Heather White, and that is Red Carnage. It's a twisted fairy tale that I'm writing, romantic suspense. This one is based on Snow White, and it is, you probably wouldn't know it was Snow White if you didn't know, because it's not going to be like I'm taking Snow White and rewriting it. It really is terribly twisted and fun. So, yeah, I'm working on that now, and that's coming in September. A little darker. I'm not going to say super dark, but a little darker than my comedies and just light and fun stuff. So, yeah.
Is that why you chose to maybe write it under a different name because you're spinning
Yeah.
things a little bit and just doing things a little bit darker?
Yeah. That, and in my former life, I was a federal investigator. And so I like mysteries, I like suspense, I like whodunits and to figure it out. So I decided that I would kind of separate that, so that it made sense for my readers.
Okay. How did you come up with the pen name?
So someone told me one time that if you're going to use a pen name, use your first and last initials because it makes it easier when you are writing your name because you have to learn to write something new. So I chose Hollis Wynn. And yeah, so Heather is actually my real name.
Okay. That's
Writing under, yeah.
I did not know that. That's a new fun fact for me that
Yeah. It's a little scary.
do you
So,
sometimes feel like that you get too much like especially like at events or like with readers that you hear Hollis so much that you like you start to fall more into that or do you always like you have it separated and you don't really struggle with that?
no, I definitely struggle because I told somebody it's like having split personalities. This is Hollis, this is Heather. And you have to know when you're in an event who you're going to be. And sometimes it's a little like, oh, I'm not sure who I am at the moment. Just yell at me and go, hey, you, and I'll probably answer.
That's hilarious. Well,
Yeah.
Did not know that, so that's a fun fact. I'm not quite as cool, I don't have, like, a whole pen name, but I technically go by my middle name, not my first name, so
Got it.
maybe it's not a jump scare, but if anyone my first name is Morgan, so if anyone
Oh,
ever calls me Morgan, I respond, I'm like, "Yes?" But
maybe?
me? But why are you calling me that? So I can see maybe why that would get a little
Yeah.
bit confusing for you, especially again, like at events and stuff, or you have
Mhm.
your friends and your family who
Yeah.
obviously not calling you Hollis, but then other people are like, "Hey, Hollis."
Yeah.
What?
It took me a while. My first event, I didn't answer when somebody said Hollis because I didn't know who they were talking to, and I was like, "Oh, that's me." And my friend was going, "They're talking to you," and I was like, "Oh."
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that you, or I mean, A, telling us that, but that you were able to tease us and not keep secrets about some of the other stuff that you
Yeah.
have upcoming for this fall. A lot of things for people to look forward to in September. And then a little bit later, whenever we get that
Yeah.
next book, just we'll look forward to it. We'll call, it's be
Yeah.
more of those comfy vibes that once it gets colder outside, you can get a nice blanket and read your next
Yes.
book. So
There you go.
that's fun and exciting. Well, how can people find you best as we kind of start to wrap this up? If people are not following you yet, where's the best way for them to get in contact maybe with you or kind of your socials and things like that?
So I am, at author Hollis Wynn on Instagram, author Hollis Wynn on TikTok and on Facebook, and I have a group on Facebook, um, HW's Hot Society, HAUTE. I have to think because I'm like, "How is it in the system?" And you can find me. You're welcome to join even if you haven't read my books, but you're interested to see what's going on. We love to have everyone. And, yeah, I Instagram's kind of where I spend most of my time if I'm not in my group, because I spend a lot of time scrolling pictures. I love flowers and gardening and, all the dog memes and stuff like that. So, that's where I do all my social media fun.
Awesome. Well, people can definitely find you there. And one final question I have to ask because you just said flowers and it just reminded me that I meant to ask this earlier, but I get very much sidetracked. Your covers for your books. How do you decide these stunning covers? And are you the one that's creating them? Do you have someone else that's creating them? How do you go about kind of designing these amazing covers? Because I'm obsessed with them. And you said flowers and immediately thought about it.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I love flowers. It's just something that's kind of part of me, and when I initially released Bent, the cover was amazing, but it had a darker tone because it was black and white, so a lot of folks thought that it was a dark romance, and I was like, "No, no, it's like the exact opposite." So, when I went to recover them, I knew I wanted floral, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted. I wanted really clean aesthetics, and so, I worked with Marissa at Cover Me Darling, and she did an exceptional job. So, both Bent and Breathe have flowers in the books. So, Breathe, there is, lemon and lavender. Bent, there's just all kinds of flowers, and then, in Crash, there's some flowers, but you'll notice in the cover there are cupcakes kind of hidden around, and she writes a blog called Cupcakes and Cocktails, and so that's where the cupcakes came in. So, yeah, Marissa is exceptional. She does so many amazing things, and I don't even have to tell her, you know? I give her a general idea, and she runs with it, and 90% of the time, I love it, so
That's
Mm.
awesome. Well, your covers are stunning and your books are great.
you.
I know so many people are going to be so excited for what's to come, not only
Thank
under
you.
Hollis, but also under your other Heather, for your real name, for people to get excited about your Snow White, darker story that we're going to have in
Yeah,
September and
mhm.
a lot of things to look forward to. And is there anything else that you maybe want to share that I didn't ask you as we kind of wrap up today that you want people to know more about you or just things in general?
If you are a blogger, influencer, bookstagrammer, book talker, please reach out if you're interested in reading my books and I will we can chat about what's happening and what's coming next and I'd love to share some of that with you guys, but thank you so much for having me. It's
Yeah.
been fun.
Yes, it was so much fun to talk to you more. And you guys make sure that you are subscribed to my YouTube channel to see every single Meet the Author interview that I have going on here because we have a lot of fun and exciting upcoming things. And thank you again, Hollis, for coming on today. It was so much fun.
Thank you again. Have a great afternoon.